Rish, good to see you, and
Great to see you.
thank you for taking a bit of time out to come and have a chat with me. I want to start by asking you about what you're doing. You sell virtual real estate that is based on real places. I mean, that strikes me as something that's going to really wind a bunch of people up. I mean, tell us about why you're doing that and what's involved and how it works.
Yeah. So, just to give you kind of the origin story of that, because you're right, it is sounds spectacular and maybe a little
Yeah,
bit crazy in a way, right? There was a game called Pokemon Go
yeah,
that came out about 9 years ago. People were running around looking for these little Pokemon. I'm sure you saw people
yeah.
running mass to different areas or heard about it at least. A lot of people don't know, and you might. It was the fastest game in history
Yeah.
to hit $1 billion in revenue. They generated $1 billion in 7 months, right? Which back then was just insane fast. And by the way, it continues to do really well. So Pokemon just got bought. Pokemon Go just got bought for like $3 or $4 billion from another company recently. So it continued to do well. And back then, when we saw that, me and my co-founder got together. We have a background. We both worked together on the YouTube platform. I previously also started a studio doing film and television and gaming and immersive content. So we know about content and how it comes together. We saw people looking for these Pokemon, and we thought, why does it have to be about Pokemon? What if instead of that Pokemon content, I could be looking for real estate opportunities? What if I could learn about your favorite places to travel? What if I could engage with my favorite sports team in real world locations, right? What if it was a not for profit that I believe in and support and I could learn about it? Maybe it's a beach cleanup or something that they're doing to educate people about the environment, right? That would be
Yeah.
cool, right? That
Yeah.
was the idea. And so we thought, what if we could build a world where you, Paul, could build content in real world locations about whatever it is you love? And I could discover that content from anywhere, and you could monetize that content in those locations. So you have a world, I have a world. There's an unlimited number of filters of world, right? Like you have one, I have one, anyone can have one.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we thought, you know what? What if we could divide the world into 64 billion blocks? So what we did is we divided Earth into blocks, zero point zero 0.01, zero point zero 0.01 longitude, latitude, covering Earth. And so all of that monetization from me interacting in your world, maybe it's about travel or things you want me to do. And by the way, it could be about all of those things at once. It doesn't have to just
Mm.
be about one. Your world is about all the things that you love, right? I know you're an explorer, so it might be some exploration kind of stuff. And so as I interact in your world, maybe I buy one of your pieces of content or buy some merchandise or, maybe give a donation to a cause you believe in, right? That creates monetization at those locations on Earth in those real, like just like the Pokemon, right? Except now that I've divided the world into those blocks, and if someone owns one of those blocks where that monetization's happening, because maybe you put some monetization, in a place that you like to explore somewhere in the world, right? You created some content there, and you created some monetization there, but someone else owns that place because they're like, oh, this place is so famous, I'm going to buy this place, right? They buy that area of the world, and now they're monetizing too because they own virtual real estate in that location, and they earn from everyone's world, everyone's map. And you can think of my world or your world as a map. And so if you own virtual real estate in Superworld, you earn from everyone's map at a certain location.
Okay. So let me ask you about that, right? Because that's
Yep.
a quite a radical idea. Well, I love it. I think it's really interesting. We're recording this, and you're on
Sure.
a little island off the coast of Brazil. I mean,
Yes.
how would I go about if I wanted to buy that island in Superworld? I mean, how would I go
Yep.
about that? How might I monetize that little island off the coast of Brazil?
Yeah, and the beauty of what I just mentioned to you in terms of the framework that we've built, which is there's two main parts of that framework. One is I have a world, you have a world. There's an unlimited number of maps, right?
Yep.
Anyone can create a map. And then the other part of the framework is we've divided that map into 64 billion blocks. Okay, and if you own a block, you earn from everyone's map. But on your map, just to be clear, you can do anything anywhere in the world. You see, you're not limited by what it doesn't matter where anyone owns real estate, you're monetizing, you're adding content on your map everywhere. And so again, your question is, how can I acquire places in the world in this island, or anywhere, to be honest, like your hometown, it could be anything. Come over to Superworld. We have a website. We also have a mobile app, and it's called superworldapp.com. You come to the page, you click on the properties tab, and right in the front page, we have a button that says Explore Virtual Real Estate. So easy to find. And it's a map. It's a Google map. We're built on Google. Imagine I'm sure if I ask you if you use Google Maps, you're going to raise your hand and tell me I use it every day, all the time,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Imagine if you could earn when you sent me your Google map. If you're like, hey, Rich, go to this place, and I click on your map and I start doing things, and now you're earning. That's what we're building. We're building just like, people know, like, oh, I use YouTube. Like, people make money on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
People make money on websites, right? And search and clicking on links. And this is how the web works, right? Imagine if you could do that on a map, but the map is linked to the real world, right? And so imagine if the actions in the real world, I'm actually going to the place that you recommend and I'm checking in physically, kind of like Pokemon. I'm walking to that location and finding the Pokemon. That's interactions in the real world. And so you just find a place that you love, a place that you have a connection to, maybe where you have a business. Just do a search. You can find it on the map. You could click. Every property is around $20 today in today's prices, in that range. And so it's really easy to acquire.
Wow. And what sort of, I mean, just give us a couple of examples of the sorts of things that people are actually doing. I mean, you've given a
Yes.
whole load of things that you could do. I mean, give us a couple of
Yeah.
examples of things that people are doing. I mean, has anyone
Yeah.
bought your island off the coast of Brazil?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What's really interesting is people buy everywhere, right? And you can
Yeah.
see it on the map. So, and by the way, I could do a screen share. Happy to show you the product and things like that too, if you'd like. But it's really visible where people buy, so
Yeah.
it's easy to see. And we're decentralized. And what that means is when you're buying these places, you actually have what's called digital property rights. Okay, this is what
Wow.
Web3 is all about.
Yeah.
And so you have digital property rights in Superworld. You own those properties, they're yours. And so, again, what do people do? And so what's interesting is, what we've seen is when I tell people about this concept or people understand about Superworld, they understand our vision. Our vision is two simple things. It's how do we build a virtual world that enhances your real life, your physical
Yeah.
life?
Yeah.
I always say I have two kids. The last thing I want to do is suck them into a virtual world, right? So it's about the real world. And it's also about how can we all together build and own a decentralized virtual world that can positively impact Earth and humanity. So I always say the world needs superworlds, like the world needs Superman or Superwoman, the world needs superworld. So given that vision, people come on board and they're like, I think I get this. Let me buy a place. So they buy a location. Okay. And that kind of clicks this kind of, a new realization now that they own a place in the real world. They own part of this location. And then what they end up doing is buying more places based on their life. Like, oh, what about my university? What about where I go on vacation? What about this place I explored? And then we asked them very early on, and we've been around for about 8 years, right? So we have a lot of experience now. Early on, so why did you buy these places? What's the reason? And they told me a story of their life. I grew up here. I went to university there. I'm an explorer. I go on these trips. I, have a business. I have a store there. I have a restaurant, or this is my favorite hotel, whatever it was, the story of their life. And then we asked them, so what do you want to do with that? And they gave us the use cases. They're like, you know what? I want to add my business in this location. I want to add content to this location. Maybe I think it's great for marketing, or maybe I got married here. I'd love to put my wedding photos here in this location in my world, right? Maybe it's they want to enable people to visualize a building. If they have a store or building, you can build a 3D representation of their location so you can walk into it and see it. And so we have people who do all sorts of use cases from, showcasing physical locations to putting artwork in locations, doing, art shows in a park where you can walk into the park and see artwork that's in augmented reality in that park. We have people who do beach cleanup. So they do it before and after content. So you can see the beach before and then you can see the beach after, and you can see that on the map. So things that are, again, improving the world. One use case is very easy. It really related to travel because, when someone asks you where to go, or if they're coming to your city, what's the best restaurants you recommend, or what's your favorite hotel? Where should I stay? A lot of people, share a Google map. They're like, oh, these are the places I'd stay. Or some people share Instagram links and things
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that. But in Superworld, you can just go search, find your favorite places, wherever they are in the world, and add them to your map. And then when you share your map, and I'm like, hey, I'm coming to your town. What should I do? You're just like, hey, just check out my world. I interact on your map, and now you're benefiting and monetizing from my interactions, digitally or physically. So travel is another, I think, a big category for us. But I'd say the biggest categories are travel, so recommending places, investments like real estate investments. So, it might be I want to invest in a property or some kind of real estate or anything physical, and that's called real world assets.
Yeah.
And then there's another category called DePIN, which is a more technical category, but there's ways to like digitally interact with the physical world. And there's a whole category called DePIN that, people in Web3 are really focused on as well. But I would say the common denominator, Paul, of all of the things that we're doing, an easy way to understand it is if you think of YouTube, YouTube is a platform for videos. Everyone's familiar with YouTube, right? You
It's
go
where
on
this
YouTube,
podcast will end up.
100%, right? You're watching this on YouTube right now. Superworld is a platform for phygital content. What's phygital content? It's content that can be located on a map, right? It has a location that you can interact with digitally on the map, or if you go to that location, you can interact with it physically. So, phygital content, that's what we are. We're a platform for phygital content of all sorts.
Okay. Now, I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's an extraordinary idea, but it's also a very different kind of business.
Yes.
And it's not your conventional service provider, not your conventional product, is it? It's a different type of business. And
Yes.
how did you, I mean, I'm interested in how you approach building a business like that. Because, you talk to people, oh, I know how to build SaaS businesses. I know how to build product business. I know how to do that. I mean, how did you work out how to build this business? Because it's a totally different business to pretty much anything else that's around. I mean, how do you work out how to take that forward? I mean, just tell us how you do that. I mean, what's your thinking process?
Well, first of all, I have a really awesome team. So me and my co-founder, I think I mentioned to you, my previous to this, I co-founded a studio in Hollywood. So doing film, television, immersive content, gaming, Web3, I say gaming immersive content, I should say. And we're very interested in Web3 as well.
Yeah.
My co-founder, he started a gaming messaging company. His name is Max Woon. He sold that to Viacom. It was called Xfire. A lot of people know about that. But then he did Fizzle, Sliver, Skit, and Toonstar, all venture-backed companies,
Right.
several of those in the immersive space. So he comes from an immersive background as well.
Yeah.
He previously worked in Stephen Hawking's department at Cambridge. So super smart guy. And we got together and we're very passionate about what Pokemon had done, right? Creating content in real world locations. And we thought, as I said, what if that could be about anything? It doesn't have to be about Pokemon. And so that was kind of the initial kind of spark of that vision. And basically, it's been kind of one step in front of the other the whole time. We started back in 2017, right? And again, very passionate about this vision of how can I be in Paul's world? How can I see the world through your eyes, Paul? How can I experience that, right? How can I live that? How can I interact with that, right? And so that was the passion about that. I'm an explorer. I'm curious. I
Yeah.
love travel. I live around the world, as you know, very nomadically. I'm a global nomad with my family. So this started from a passion for, learning about the world. And then, in on the technology side, it was kind of thinking about the technologies that would be involved in that. Obviously, mapping and the Pokemon part of it lends itself to immersive technology. That's augmented reality and virtual reality.
Yeah.
I also previously part of that studio was virtual reality technology. So we come from that space too. So, right. If we're going to divide Earth into 64 billion blocks, and I tell you to buy a block, I would love for you to own that block, just as you own a piece of real estate in the real world, right? And that's property rights. And that's where Web3, the blockchain comes in, right? So we knew, if we're going to do this, we gotta do this on the blockchain. So if you buy, Trafalgar Square in London, I want you to own Trafalgar Square. I want you to actually be the guy who owns it and feel comfortable with that. Because if that thing is starting to be worth, $100 million or whatever it is, $10,000, it doesn't matter. You have the property rights just as you would in the real world, right? And so that was Web3 technology. And then AI, 7 years ago, 8 years ago, AI was still, now it's like, oh yeah, chat GPT. A lot of people, are obviously using LLMs and generative AI. But back then, it was still people couldn't get their hands around kind of tangible use cases for AI. And we thought, you know what? AI should be used for content generation. It should be used to understand the context of the world around you. So we knew AI had to be part of it. And so it really kind of started, as I said, one step at a time, building this idea, starting out, and really doing a lot of experimentation. What is it that you like? What, talking to our users, and just building incrementally.
Yeah.
Um,
So
and yeah,
let me just ask
yeah,
about that. I mean, you seem
sure.
to have been quite ahead of the curve. Were you? I mean, one of the things that I experienced was that, pre-COVID, people
Yeah,
didn't really like using Zoom. Now, it's the opposite way around. You can't,
yeah,
I mean, I, struggle to meet people in the real world now. I
yeah.
mean, did COVID help? I mean, you started well before COVID came up. I mean, did COVID have an impact on the way the business developed?
100%. Yeah. I've been working remotely for about, 12, 13 years already, right? So I was early to the distributed remote kind of work environment.
Yeah.
And so I understand the benefits of being virtual in many ways, right? Being able, if you're in a work environment, being able to access, you know, uh, people all around the
Yeah.
world who are the best at what they do, and being able to operate a business that is very global and asynchronous and distributed and remote. And then as you mentioned, in a work environment, being able to communicate like this in a very in an almost like way that we're almost in the same room.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'll give you a funny story. I just ran into someone this morning who I've never met in person. He came up to me in the coffee store. He's like, "Hey, Rish." And I was like, wait, how do I know this person? I'd never met him in person before. I worked with him like 5 years ago remotely. And turns out to be one of our designers at Superworld.
Wow.
And
Your little island off the Brazilian coast is a lot more popular than I thought.
I know, right? I know. I'm surprised. And so, long story short, what we realized is that this virtual kind of environment that we're in is preferable to a lot of people. It gives them a lot of flexibility. And technologically, it's very possible. And a lot of times you don't know if you've met them in person or not. After a while, you're like, wait, did we ever meet in person? No, I guess we didn't. We just always talked
Yeah.
online. And so during COVID was when, we got forced to be in this situation. Many people did, and they had to start realizing, wait, first of all, we have to do this. And many people were like, wait, actually, I prefer doing this. And then I realized that there's going to be a lot of people in the future that are going to be more digital. And whether it's having a Zoom call or,
It becomes
thinking
second
about,
nature, doesn't it? And there's a lot of
yeah.
young people who've not known anything else.
100%. And you know what's interesting is as we start interacting more in these digital environments, right? We start thinking about what do I own in the digital environment? I'm
Mm.
using this website every day, whether it's Facebook or Instagram or YouTube or, you name it. These are digital environments. And you're like, I actually don't own anything in those environments. I'm just using them a lot. And then you start thinking about property rights because in the real world, you might own your car, you might own
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
place where you live, you might own places, but you in the digital world, you don't really think about that as much. And that was kind of what, with Superworld, when people started thinking about this, they're like, wait, I can own the places I spend time in digitally and physically, like in those physical places I spend time with. And that was where that really started
Well,
booming. People were
and
like,
let
yeah,
me ask you about, I mean, one of the
yeah,
things about building a business is
yeah,
getting the right team on board is pretty important. I mean,
yeah.
it strikes me that yours is a very, very interesting but very different business. I mean, how do you go about getting the right people on board? I mean, what's your take on getting the right people on the bus? Because yours isn't a regular bus, if you get my point.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a magical mystery bus.
Okay, yeah, that's
So
probably a good way to put it. Yeah.
yeah, no, it's one thing I always say to people is I like people that think outside of the box because and that's obviously, a cliche in many ways. But in our case, it is a reality because, a lot of the things that we're building don't exist, right? I mean, no one is doing this, literally. And a lot of the things that we're even the new things that we're building, we just came out with I built a kind of a new category. We called it real world locations, RWL. There's a category called real world assets, which is like physical assets, right? We created a category called real world locations, and that combines immersive tech, Web3, AI, real world assets, and DeepIn. So it's all five of those technologies, which includes like robotics and things like that, right? And so the idea is we're, always innovating. And so if we're innovating and thinking about the world in these new ways, you want people that are open to coming up with new frameworks,
And
open
I mean,
to,
it's
yeah,
very easy to say you want people that think outside the box. It's a
yeah.
bit trickier to find them, isn't it? I mean, how do you go about finding them?
What's really cool is when we created this idea of Superworld, it was obviously outside of the box, quote unquote, right?
Yep.
And what was interesting is we started getting people that, and some of the smartest people in the world, I should say, who I approached who were like, wait, this makes total sense. I get it, right?
Right.
And so, we have people like Bob Metcalf, who created Ethernet. If you've heard of
Yeah,
Metcalf's
yeah.
law of network effects, he won the Turing Award a couple of years ago, which is like the Nobel Prize for computer science. He's an advisor on the team. We have Stephen Wolfram, who's kind of the world-renowned computer scientist, physicist in the world. He's part of Superworld. And I bring up, those two. I mean, there's lots of people. Nitin Gower, who worked at IBM, he started the digital assets group at IBM. He's
Wow.
an investor. So you name the category, and there are people who are like, wait, this makes a lot of sense. I love it. Let's do. They're excited, and I think
Okay.
there's this phrase or kind of this kind of framework, which is if you come up with an idea that's massive, huge, huge, crazy idea, moonshot, people call it, right? Come up with a moonshot idea, people are like, wait, I want to be part of that. That is going to transform the world. And if you come up with ideas like that, that makes sense, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Elon does it like every week, I think. But you come up with ideas like that, you get people that support you. And we're backed by Tim Draper. He's, top venture capitalist in the world. He backs Elon, at SpaceX and Tesla and, all those
Wow.
companies.
Wow.
So you get a lot of really smart, awesome people that want to be part of the vision, understand that you're one of the crazy ones as well, and you want to go after it. So that's you kind of self-selects in a way, if that's
Yeah,
if
no, I get that. I mean, I can
yeah
see why people are excited about doing something that's really
yeah
interesting and different. I totally get that. Let
yeah
me ask you though about, okay, you get the right people on the bus. If you
yeah
like, the next question then is how do you create an environment in which they can do their best work? I mean, now you've got people all over the world, haven't you? I mean,
hmm
have you ever met them all together at one time? I mean, is that even doable for you? I mean, I don't know, but how do you build a team that performs to the standards that you're looking for? Because you're doing stuff that is right at the cutting edge. How do you
yeah
create a culture, a community that enables people to perform at that kind of cutting edge? Yeah, how do you
yeah.
do that?
Well, so again, my I previously also was an early employee, first business development executive at a company called TopTal, which is an elite global talent marketplace.
Right.
And TopTal is a company that basically curates the best talent around the world, and that's what we built there. And so I kind of, came up early. This is way before the remote revolution
Yeah.
of like COVID and stuff, as I mentioned. And so we were one of the first fully remote, asynchronous, distributed companies, and
Yeah.
the company itself is about remote talent, right?
Yeah.
And connecting other companies with remote talent. And so I learned a lot about how do you operate and manage a team remotely in a distributed environment? How do you do that in a way that's actually better than a physical environment? Because a lot of
Well, give
people,
us
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
tell us how. I
how to
mean,
do it.
not
Yeah,
in detail, but give it,
yeah,
if I was to say to you, what's the most
yeah.
important thing that you've learnt about managing people remotely? I mean, what would it be?
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, and one aside there is a lot of people would say, "Hey, you can't do that." And it's like you can't do that. Like you got to be in the same location. It's like the
I hear
best
that all the
companies
time.
get 100%. I hear it all the time too. And a lot of people, smart people say that. So nothing. I mean, obviously, nothing against those people, and I think that's very true that it actually being in one place is very positive. I think all those people would also say that we live in a very global world, right? And just to outline the reasons you want to do this first, because there's a book called Remote that came out in 2013, which was what's the case for being remote. So first
Yeah.
you got to figure out the why. The why is global talent. The why is people want to be free of a location, or many people do. Not everyone, but a lot of people do. And if you want the best people, you're gonna get people that want to be around the world, right? If you want to run a very global company with a global audience, you got to have people who understand those markets and understand different places. You can't all be in one place and think of yourself as a team that understands the world, right? If you have people from all over the world, hey, you're definitely more plugged in, right? And so there's all these whys. So if you get over the hump of why and why it's better, okay, which again, that's a debate for some people, right? And there's regulatory reasons why some people, like if they're in banking or medicine or stuff, maybe they
Yeah.
can't do that because of
Yeah.
privacy or laws. But in most cases, if you can do it, I recommend it because it's better. Now, how do you do it? Well, how do you do it is really first and foremost, I think, having this idea from all aspects of the company that this is the better way to do it. So you got to have that in there because if you have certain people who are like, "Hey, I can't work unless I'm in the same room with someone," right? Then you got some weak links there that they don't know what to do if they're
That's
not
not
in
going
a
to
room
work,
with
is it?
someone. That's not going to work. So you got to make sure everyone who comes on board is like, "Yep, this is what I love. I'm enjoying. This is the environment I like to be in. I want to be mobile. I want to be in my whatever country they happen to be in." So it has to be a spirit of understanding that this is how it operates. Okay, first and foremost. Secondly, like for example, I don't have any clue where anyone actually is. Like I gave you the example of the guy I met in the coffee shop. I was like,
Yeah.
wait, you live in this city? I didn't know that. I thought I forgot, I thought you were in Chile or something, you know what I mean? And he's like, no, no, I moved here. And I was like, oh, wow, you know what? I probably live here because you mentioned it to me. You know, that's pretty funny. You know, I just
Yeah.
took that information in, and then 2 years later, I live here now, again. And so I didn't even realize he was the person for that. But the point of that is that you have to be, you have to not think about even where people are. So you got to run it in a way, it doesn't matter where someone is. They could be anywhere, and I could be anywhere. We're always in motion. Okay.
Yeah.
Because if you want to be truly remote, you don't want to be like, oh, I can only work with this person if they're in this time zone. I have to know what time zone they're in right now to be able to work with them. So, in a way, your own schedule sometimes, I mean, it doesn't have to be this way, but we run it this way where you're open. Like I'm open. It just wherever time zone you happen to be in, let's figure out a time that works, right? So sometimes things are on the fly. There's other meetings that are more, typically if they're like weekly meetings, they typically happen in a certain time zone. So for us, we're kind of US Eastern time zone.
Yeah.
That's kind of like we know if we're doing like a global meeting, like anyone from around the world's plugging into that, it's probably going to be US Eastern time zone at some point that accommodates most time zones in the world, right? So I'd say like morning Pacific time is generally like that. So Pacific time at,
Yeah.
early afternoon Eastern time, just US time zones, I guess. And then you have these kind of weekly meetings. You can have asynchronous check-ins. You're on a platform like Slack, where you have people around the world communicating with each other. There's smaller groups that might be meeting individually or people meeting individually. But then things are on Slack, so everyone's kind of involved. I think in some ways having a flatter structure works well because you can communicate with lots of people at once and
And
they're all able to,
what
you know.
about things like monitoring performance? I mean, that must be a bit of a challenge.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'd say like the other thing that is definitely important is, you want to make sure, again, you're self-selecting for people that actually want to do
So they're
this, right?
self-motivated.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know if this necessarily can work with every type of business in that sense, meaning, it might be harder to find people that are super passionate about certain kinds of things. I don't know. I mean, maybe it's not true. Maybe, you'll find someone who's passionate about anything. But this goes back to this self-selecting people that like want to do this. Like I always ask people like, this is what we're doing. Like, are you excited about that? Like what, if
Yeah.
I ask you,
Yeah.
what do
Yeah.
you do?
Yeah.
Are you excited to say you're building Superworld?
Yeah.
And I want to gauge like, do they get what we're doing? We're building a world. Like, have you ever done that? And like this isn't just a, whatever
So you're looking
XYZ.
for people that are as excited about it as you are, really, aren't you?
I want people who want to go to the moon. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Back in the days of that phrase. I want people that, like are really excited about doing something massive that's going to be transformative. And
Let
so
me.
those people love it,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they
Let
know
me.
I love it.
Yeah, no,
They can
and that
feel it.
comes across. I'm sure if I spoke to
Yeah.
your people, it would come across as well. I mean, let me ask you about. So
Yeah.
you've got this extraordinary proposition.
Yeah.
You've got a bunch of extraordinary people involved. I mean, tell me about the users, the customers, the people that buy the virtual real estate and
Yeah.
etc. I mean, what do they look like to you?
Yeah. I talked to, so I just did this podcast yesterday on X on Twitter to our global community because we're doing a token launch, which is on it's republic.com/superworld. So depending on when this airs, you may or may not be able to see that. But if you see it, go check it out. But the point is we have a lot of stakeholders around the world,
Yeah,
right? The beauty of what we're building is a decentralized world,
yeah,
right? As I mentioned, which means that anyone can get involved. And we're launching a currency. Okay. So, you can buy what's called SPWR, which is a currency that's launching, and we call it superpower, SPWR. So now you have superpowers,
okay.
right? And so you could buy real estate, you could create your own map, you could buy the currency. So, we have lots of ways for people to get involved. And yesterday, while I was doing this show, a guy got involved in 2017. He's a real estate owner in
Right.
2017, right? And think about it. He's like on the call. He's like, yeah, I own properties in New York, ex Wall Street guy, so very sophisticated, investment banker. And he is like, I am early in this movement. I own these places in New York. He's asking about the future, what's coming, what we're thinking about, what we're building. And I would tell you that, that is a very indicative type of, indicative of our demographic. It's
Yeah.
people that I would say are open-minded, are thinking of the future. Maybe they use, ChatGPT a lot. They're trying to get into AI. Maybe they're explorers like yourself. They're open to, learning and curious. Maybe they're using, they're entrepreneur, right? They're doing something that no one's done before. They're building their own business. Maybe they have a headset, Maybe they're a gamer. They do some digital things. They're already in the digital world. Maybe it's their kids that are like, I
Mhm.
see that they're into these games. Like, I want to learn about this, but
Yeah.
I also am into the real world. Superworld's different. It's about the real world, right? We don't want to get people into a virtual world. It's quite counterintuitive. This is about going out in the real world. And so some people are like, you know what, Rich? I love what you're doing because I don't want to get sucked into all this technology. I want to use technology that's going to get me out there exploring real places, meeting real people, right? And that's what we're about. So there's people that are really into that aspect of what we're doing.
Yeah.
And so what I find is that there's people that are really want to make a change, want to get ahead of things, want to they're not always conventional, right? They're going to be the first movers into new spaces. And then now when I'm explaining Superworld in a way where it's like, do you use Google Maps? Now I get 100% of the people to raise their hands in that room. And I'm like, well, do you make money on your Google Map? No. Uh, what if you could benefit when you use your Google Map? Or what if you could benefit when you send your Google Map? And so that's a wider audience now.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, wait, I get
Yeah,
this.
I mean, I want to come back to that
Yeah.
in a second, but before we
Yeah.
move on, I mean,
Sure.
are the people that use it? I mean, my perception, and I think probably quite a few viewers' perception would be the
Yeah.
people that use Superworld are people that are quite techie. I mean, is
Mm.
that true? Do you need to have a sort of fairly technical, capabilities of, fairly advanced technical capabilities to be able to do those things, to, buy real estate, to build stuff in there? I mean, what are the capabilities that are needed to do that? Or is it
Yeah, I would
something?
say not anymore. And this is where the
Right.
when I was saying, at first it was like the first movers,
Yeah.
the techie kind of AI and crypto. That was 7 years ago. Those are those guys,
Yeah.
right? Now, I mean, with the advancements in these technologies, the ability to now we have a Superworld wallet. You just click a button, sign up on your email, you automatically have a wallet, just Superworld wallet, right?
Yeah.
And there's a company called Stripe, which everyone uses to check
Yeah.
out on
Yeah.
things. We're partnered with Stripe, right? So if you're using if
Right.
if you can pay with a credit card, you can use Superworld, right? If you can create a Google map or use Google Maps, you can use Superworld. We're
Okay.
built on Google
Cool.
Maps. So
And
we've gotten it to the point now where now it's a lot more mainstream. We're launching our token in the US and globally. We want to get the mainstream involved in what we're doing.
okay.
But I would say, yes, 8 years ago, you needed a PhD to figure out what to do.
Okay.
It was pretty
So,
funny.
so, so you're now, you've moved a long way in the last 7 years. Just
Yeah.
to pick up that front, you talked a minute ago about, all these range of people that can now use it and
Yeah.
play the game, if you like. Um,
Mhm.
how do you, I mean, in terms of communication, I mean, the more stakeholders you've got, the more types of audiences, the more people involved, the
Yeah.
trickier it is to get the communication right. I mean, what's your thoughts on that kind of communication piece? Because as you grow, you're not just
Yeah.
talking to the clever techie people that have a sort of their own language and their own world and their own set of understandings. You're talking to
Yes.
idiots like me who are clueless. I mean, how do you bridge that gap in communications terms?
Well, I think that everyone has a talent, right? And everyone is smart. And, I learn a lot from people. It's like you and I have these conversations about your travels, and I'm just intrigued, and, and so everyone has something they can add. And if you're building a world, this is not just for, the techies or any
Yeah.
specific group. This is literally for anyone. You could be into fashion. Your world could be about music, right? It doesn't even have to be visual. It could be audio. Your
Yeah.
world has audio music all over the place, right? It could be literally sports. I told you any category you can think of. We cover Earth. We have tribes in the Amazon jungle. I was shocked when this was not even recently. This was like 5 years ago. Tribes in the Amazon jungle showed me what they're doing in Superworld, showing their digital artwork in the Amazon so people could learn where deforestation is occurring because they wanted to
Wow.
retain their cultural heritage.
Sure.
And so, people of all different, vocations and interests can use the platform. And I think back to your question about, how do we kind of talk about this and explain what it is? I'll give you a interesting story. I saw a video, and this is you guys, your audience has probably seen this video. It's very viral, and it's the early YouTube founders. And they're talking about how at that point, YouTube only had about 60 videos on the platform.
Right.
And they're talking about how they're like, wow, I don't even know anyone who would watch these videos.
Yeah.
They're just so random. Like they were complaining about the types of videos on YouTube at
Right.
that point. There were only 60. And as you and I know, YouTube basically made their search algorithm really great. So you can just search for anything. You
Yeah.
could watch videos about travel or music or history, you name it. There's going to be videos out there, right? And as I explained to you, if YouTube does videos, we do phygital content. And what is phygital content? I bet you don't know someone who tells you, "Oh, I'm making phygital content today." Haven't heard of that, right?
Yeah.
Phygital content is really just any content. And in Superworld, we enable that content. It could be anything. It could be photos, videos, music, anything. We enable people to digitally on a map, interact with it, maybe buy it, listen to it, watch it, whatever, or in that real location, interact with it. Maybe they click on it, maybe they get a coupon to go into a store, maybe they click on it to say that they're there. They went to that. It's like Pokemon Go, right? They went to that location. Maybe it's they get a QR code for something. I mean, we're launching a game soon. We can't announce it yet, but you can win some actual like stuff when you go to that location, right? And I don't want to say the stuff, it's cool stuff, but you get some prizes, let's say, right, that are worth a lot at
Well,
those locations. So, it could be anything. And so, long story short, I think, back to that YouTube analogy with the YouTube founders, YouTube does videos. And they didn't say, oh, we're only doing these types of videos. YouTube's like, upload whatever you want. Could be about
yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
And for us, it's similar. It's Superworld is a platform for phygital content. Upload whatever you want. And we'd love for you to see it. And what we're trying to do is make it easy to discover, make it easy for you to, as a creator, make money from that or interact with that or educate people or entertain people. And to enable all of us together as stakeholders to benefit from that. And I'll give you one more example that
Mhm.
also people can relate to. I'm sure you guys all use, or a lot of you have used Airbnb,
Yep. Yep.
right? You go somewhere and you rent a room, right? And you don't use a hotel anymore. You're like, I'm going to rent my own apartment because I'm going to feel more like a local. I don't want to stay in a hotel. I want to rent an apartment. I want a kitchen. I want to feel more of a local, a native in that location. That's part of Airbnb's charm there. And you know what? They unlocked a secret. Okay. And what's their secret that was in plain sight, but we didn't know about it prior to Airbnb? And that secret was your room in your apartment or your house can actually make you money. People are like, well, I didn't think about that. Wait, you mean I have like a hotel room in my house? Wow, that's incredible. And Uber unlocked the secret of my car can actually make money if I'm like have some free time. I can pick someone up and I just made $20 instead of just sitting here in my car. I can just turn it on and go pick someone up. And so that was a secret. It was a secret in plain sight. Now, what is the secret of Superworld? The secret of Superworld is that reality itself can be unlocked. Everything around you, all of your interactions, everything you see around you, you can benefit from and monetize.
Mm.
And people haven't thought about that.
Mm.
They don't realize that we're in a world that we make and own ourselves. We say the world is yours in Superworld.
Mm.
And so that's the secret
That
that
you can
as more
unlock the world. Yeah, I mean,
you
it's
can
extraordinary.
unlock the world, everything around you, whether it's the space, and we call that virtual real estate, whether it's interactions, maybe you meet someone, maybe you go somewhere, maybe it's the physical real estate.
Yeah,
You
well,
know,
it's
you can
extraordinary. It's
buy real
extraordinary.
estate. Yeah. So that
But
that's what we're doing. And there's some of the smart people that I mentioned who got involved. And there's a guy, Stephen Wolfram, I'll bring up this story forever. A lot of people, even the smartest people, I tell them about Superworld. It takes them, you gotta explain it a little bit more. He got it in like 2 seconds. He's like, I get this. This is GPS for life.
yeah, yeah,
And I was like, whoa, GPS for life. Never thought of it saying it
yeah,
that way. It was like
yeah.
3 words. So this is my point. Back to your question, how do you explain this to a lot of people? What is it? When people kind of think about it, then and they get it, they're like, okay, I got to go buy up some London right now.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Let me ask you about, I mean, like I said, you've got this extraordinary proposition. I
Yeah,
mean, and you've obviously been on a bit of a journey. I mean, you've been at it for a few
yeah,
years now. Let
yeah,
me ask you about what you've learned from that experience. I mean, let me start with a couple of, so on that journey, has there
yeah.
anything that has just really surprised you that you really weren't expecting that has just popped up and thought, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that. I mean, have you had any really interesting surprises along the way?
It's that I love that you asked this question because I think there's just so much beauty in the world around us, right? And I think the thing that really inspires me every single day is when I talk to people and I hear their stories. I hear why that they, maybe acquired certain locations around the world, the stories related to that. I hear about what inspires them about what we're building, whether it's, hey, I'm an explorer and I want people to see these places that I've been, or people say, oh, I'm a foodie and I love these restaurants and I know all these cool places. And, I'd love for people to know about those too and be able to learn the way I kind of, interact in these places, or maybe I can get someone to take, we're adding features now where, similar to Airbnb, where, they have experiences and services
Yeah,
now in Superworld, right? I mean, soon in Superworld, we'll have experience and services. So you could be a photographer and you could sell, your photography tour, photography photo shoot, or you can do a walking tour. Maybe you're a chef, or maybe you do, anything, right? And so, that unlocks a lot of stories and a lot of like talents and a lot of information and knowledge and education. And so that unlock of those things is really interesting to me. And I'm also a real lover of maps. Like I've always loved maps
yeah.
and,
I like maps.
looking. Yeah, I like
Yeah,
maps,
they're great, aren't
and
they?
it's amazing. Yeah, see the world and exploring the
They tell
world.
their own stories, maps, don't they?
Yeah, yeah. There's so much history, and how do these maps, these locations, and these borders, and as you know, our vision is very global, right? Superworld covers Earth, and so when you start kind of breaking those borders and thinking, just much more globally, you hear a lot of these stories. So I'd say the stories are things that are really amazing. And so, being able to hear stories about what inspires people is surprising. And, I think the realization that you were asking about is that the world is a lot smaller than we think, meaning these places that seem far away can be accessible, can be experienced. These technologies make it easy to be a
It's
stakeholder in
Yeah, it's a
places.
totally different way of thinking about things, I think. Let me ask you about the
Yeah.
flip side to that. I mean, I totally get what you're saying. I mean, some of
Yeah.
the stories you must have come across must be absolutely fascinating. I mean, like you, I'm a fan of stories. They engage, don't they? They excite you. I totally get that. Let me ask you about the flip side. Have you had any horrible surprises? Things where you think, oh my God, I've done that completely wrong, or whatever. I mean, tell me about the flip side. Stuff that you perhaps think, I wish I hadn't done that.
Horrible stuff. It's hard to really pin down something that's horrible. I think that I think sometimes things, and by the way, I'm an optimist. I'm a very positive person.
I
So,
would never have guessed that, Rish.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, it's hard to kind of put those in my head. But I would say that, I think that um some people want things now. You know what I
Okay.
mean? Some
Yeah,
people are very like now. They're just in the meaning they just some of these things you need some patience.
yeah,
You need some kind of vision. You want people to be long-term oriented.
yeah,
And so whenever I talk to anyone about Superworld, even if they're investors, they're partners, they're users, anyone, honestly, who interacts with any of the things that we're working on or doing or the vision here, is I want people to have this long horizon about what we're building. And I think Jeff Bezos talks a lot about this too, even with Amazon, which Amazon's a very understandable product. They're doing e-commerce, right? They're selling products online, which is a very understandable notion, right? As you mentioned, right? And but even then, I mean, what they've done over the years in their business with AWS, with Amazon Prime, I mean, they've built an amazing business, and he's doing a lot of things in space as well. He's really building for the long term.
mm,
And so, I would say where people can, get kind of stuck, and let's use that as the
yeah,
horrible
yeah.
experience kind of thing, is they're like, how can I get this technology to happen now? And some things like if you remember the days of dialing up to your internet.
Unfortunately, I do remember those days. Yeah,
You're right. You're like, I want to get on the internet right now. Why do I have
now,
to do
yeah,
this
yeah,
thing with the
yeah,
tape cassette
yeah,
player and
yeah,
plugging it in and doing all that, right? And then you saw 10 years later, boom, you're always on the internet, right? You didn't have to worry about that kind of thing. And so that those are kinds of the growing pains of technology that you want people to understand. Look, this Web3 stuff as an example, blockchain and crypto and owning digital assets and having property rights. Right now, it's going to be like, wait, how do I buy, this crypto and what's this wallet and all this stuff, right? Those things are going to get better and better every year, and AI is getting faster.
yeah.
Programming is
Right.
happening using AI. So, this is, I think, the thing that really alleviates a lot of this is one, I tell people up front, hey, this is a long term, you got to think long term about these technologies. And it also self selects for people, as I said, who are very long term oriented. Because those who can't get down the funnel of, I need to get a wallet and I don't know how to do that, those people are going to get stuck anyway. And so the people who go all the way down are the people who are like, oh, I figured this out, or and they get through it. Just like maybe how you logged into the internet, and maybe a lot of people didn't want to deal with that in the 90s, but in 2000 they were on board.
Yeah, yeah. Let me ask you one last
Yeah.
question just before we
Yeah.
wind up. Um,
Sure.
I mean, it sounds to me like it's been an absolutely fascinating journey that you've been on. It's certainly a fascinating idea that fascinating world that you're building. Let
Thank
me
you.
ask you, if when you look back on that journey,
Mhm.
if you were starting again,
Mhm.
what piece of advice would you give yourself, knowing what you know now, what would you have said to yourself 8 years ago or 10 years ago, whatever it was, no, yeah, 2017, 8 years ago? What advice would you give yourself?
Well, that's an awesome question. And you can probably tell this, but I love what we're doing. I
Yeah.
love it.
Oh, that
I'm
comes
really,
across really, yeah, I get that.
thank you, thank you. And I'm fascinated by it. I'm like literally fascinated by what we're building. I like have conversations about, we just added chat groups to the map, so if you're on a WhatsApp group or a Telegram group, or you can create a Superworld group, you can say, "Hey, look, I'm not going to be at the conference, but here's a link to my chat group. I'm going to put it in Dubai." I'm not going to be in Dubai, but just click on my group and
Wow.
join me in Dubai, right? And, that might seem like a simple concept, but if you think deeper about that, now you're creating a community in Dubai, that you've created. People can find, join you. They're like, "Oh, Rish was here in Dubai. I'm going to join that chat group," like it's a kind of area. So, there's a lot of kind of depth to what we're doing in different ways, right? And I just gave that as an example, but it could be about these services or experiences or the stories that we talked about. So I myself am very fascinated with the different aspects that we're doing. I love it. I believe in it. I'm very long-term oriented. And I've been that way, if you had asked me in 2017, and you see I have interviews back when we started this, and,
Mm.
I'm definitely excited about what we were building. And it was before even a lot of the products were built. We were talking about these products, right? And, the advice I would give myself is really to focus in on the why, because I think the why is a question. I mean, Simon Sinek brings this up
Yeah.
quite a bit if you know him. But the why is really important. It's not about the how, it's not about the what, maybe, right? The what and the how kind of figures itself out, okay? But it's really the why. If you figure out the why, and this doesn't apply just to like starting a business, it can apply to anything, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like really focus in on the why, because you got the why down, then you figure out the what and the how, but you got to really love the why and figure out the why first, because if you got the wrong why, then maybe it's
You're
not going to
going
be
the wrong
something
way, aren't
interesting.
you?
What's that?
You're going to go the wrong way if you've got the wrong
you,
why.
you you might go the wrong way, or you might kind of just not be as interested in it because the why was maybe some short-term why. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe the why was a why at that time, right? So if you think of something that you want to do that requires a lot of steps, whether it's like working out and getting into shape or traveling or, whatever it happens to be, like if you really figure out what is your why, who are you, like you really understand yourself, um, then that's what kind of drives you to like it's kind of a self-perpetuating activity.
And do you feel that you've sort of changed, grown, developed over the last, 8, 9 years while you've been working on this? I mean, how have you changed? I mean, over that period, because it must have been an extraordinary journey.
Yeah, I mean, I think we change every moment, right? I think we're constantly evolving, constantly changing, constantly learning. Especially if you're growth oriented, you're always, trying to expand yourself, improve yourself. It's like a big part of, I'm a big Tony Robbins guy. I'm part of Tony's community, and he has a phrase, constant and never-ending improvement, with I think it comes from Japan,
Yeah, yeah,
some management theory back then. So, long story short, I think that you're always changing, you're always developing, you're always evolving. And, I think a lot of that, as we're building a very organic world, we're building a community. Another way that a lot of people are now talking about this is Superworld's a network state. I don't know if you've heard of that
yeah,
concept,
I have.
but there
Yeah,
were digital companies, there's digital currencies, but what about digital countries?
yeah.
What about
But
digital
to come,
communities?
I mean, I get that concept. Have you,
Yeah,
in terms of you, are you
yeah,
different to? I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, I can absolutely see that
yeah,
so many interesting things happening every day that you're going to
yeah,
develop. The knowledge is going to develop. Your skills are going to develop. That
yeah,
your thoughts and ideas are going to evolve. In what
yeah.
way has that happened to you? I mean, how are you different to 2017?
Yeah, yeah, and the reason I was bringing up the network state thing is, we're organic, right? We are as individuals are organic, right? We as societies are organic, right? Society grows and changes and develops. And I would say that I'm constantly learning and I'm realizing, that all of the world around us is really comes from inside, right? It comes from being, figuring out your inner self and inner journey, and that inner journey can help you shape the outer world around you. And in ways, that's an analogy for what we're doing at Superworld too, right? I'm asking you to share your world with the world and create the world
Yeah.
around you and
Yeah.
own that world. And so over the years, I think that that's one area that I've been really kind of focused on. And whether that means like meditation and, focusing on that, whether that means, nutrition. I'm a fan of, Brian Johnson and what he's doing in terms of health and things like that. I come from India and an Indian tradition of spirituality and things like
Yeah.
this. And
Yeah.
and so I think I've gotten more and more into some of those learnings and interests. But I think ultimately, as I said, I'm always interested in learning and
Yeah.
growing. So it's a constant evolution for me. I'm now like, for example, again, really into kind of embracing a lot of the things that are happening on the technology side. So it's constant learning. I mean, it's constant learning. I just enjoy it. I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
passionate about it. I'm a passionate person. So
Absolutely. Rish,
yeah.
I mean, that's an extraordinary way to end the interview, actually. I mean, that idea, I mean, it's a very well-made point that we create our own worlds, don't we? I mean, you're doing
Yes.
it you're doing it on quite a big scale. I mean, Rish, that's been an extraordinary conversation. Thank you for making time. I mean,
Thank you.
good luck going forward. I mean, I think it's a absolutely brilliant idea, and I've no doubt it will go from strength to strength, So thank you for
Thank you.
coming and talking about it, and thank you for sharing that journey.
Thank you. I really appreciate your support and appreciation for what we're doing. And I think that, as you encapsulated, like, yeah, it is our own world and we're sharing that with the world. And, I think what we're doing is, for everyone who's listening is we all build it together. So, that's the beauty of what we're doing is if there's something that you have to contribute to the world and show the world and share your story, come over to Superworld and help us build a better world, right? Ultimately,
Yeah,
if there's things that you are passionate about and you care about, those things can help other people. So we can do that together in Superworld. That's the vision.
yeah. What a great message,
Yeah.
Rish. Good to speak to you, and I look forward to catching up again soon.
Yeah, thanks so much, Paul. Excited to see you again and share and continue our journey. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.